I'm good. How's it going?
It's going great. I'm going to be wobbly today because I'm on my laptop's bouncing on my knee. So you'll be the steady one, and I'll be
Nice. Always glad to provide a little oasis of steadiness.
perfect. So let's jump right in. You have a lot of things that I could talk to you about today, but one of the things that I want to focus on is um, risk and spinning our wheels. Some people seem to have a knack for turning their big ideas into products or monetizable businesses. And then some of us kind of just spin our wheels and we kind of have a hard time looking at what we might be able to do, what we might be able to turn into ideas. Is there a risk when we don't pursue our dreams or when we don't follow our hearts? What happens when we sit on our ideas?
Well, I think the risk, of course, is just that you end up feeling kind of bad about yourself, right? I mean, I know for me, I I really wanted, I've kind of always wanted to write a book, right? Just for whatever reason, that was sort of like a bucket list goal of mine since I was like a little kid. I just thought it would be cool to write a book. And so in my 20s, my early 20s, I wrote a mystery novel, and I actually even sold the mystery novel, or was, I had an offer. I didn't actually sell it, but I had an offer for a publishing house to buy the book, and I was so excited. And then of course it was this small publishing house, and then they fucking went out of business. And so they never officially bought the book or published the book, and it was so depressing. And of course I tried to sell it to other places, and then they didn't want it, so it's
Yeah,
still mothballed. It's still in a drawer, and it just really felt like unfinished business for
yeah,
me for a long time, and it was kind of embarrassing because of course I had told like my family, my friends, like, oh my God, I'm going to publish a book. And then it didn't happen. And so at a certain point, you just get sick of yourself talking,
yeah,
and it's like, come on, are you going to do it or are you not going to do it?
yeah,
So that was something that was highly motivating for me in uh, ultimately publishing my first book, Reinventing You, which is sadly not a mystery novel, although I think it's cool as well as a business book.
yeah,
And now I've done 3 of them, so I feel like, okay, I have now officially established, yes, I can write books. I still want to write a mystery novel eventually,
yeah.
but yeah, it's like, I mean, we sort of think about, if we don't fulfill our dreams, that we'll be sad on our deathbed. And I'm sure that's probably true, but it's also true, even as a more clear and present danger,
Mhm.
that you're going to be embarrassed because after a while you look really lame, always talking about something and then not doing it. So it's like, come on, let's make it happen.
Well, I almost think too that that could also kind of go into your inner thoughts and your inner dialogue too. It might not always be something you're talking outwardly about, but the things that you roll on in your head over and over and over, ideas, and I should do, I should do, I should do, and not doing that kind of stagnates, I guess, your creativity almost.
Yeah, you get like caught on an endless loop.
Yeah, yeah. How did you know that there was a bigger world for you? You were born and raised in a small town in North Carolina. Um, how did you know there was a bigger future for you than if you'd stayed?
Well, I think that probably uh, I would probably attribute that to 2 things. One was I was, very lucky. I'm very close with my mom. I just actually got back from visiting her
Oh,
yesterday. She's still in North Carolina, and she, is such a good mom, and so like loving and encouraging. And so she was always like, "You could do anything, baby," So I feel like I had a nice booster in my corner that helped
yeah,
me early on feel good about my abilities.
yeah,
So that is always positive if you have that. And then the second thing to which I credit it was, probably like, growing up and being gay in this little town in North Carolina. It's like you look around and you're like, this doesn't really feel like my world. This doesn't
right,
really feel like where I'm fitting in. And so I think it's a little extra incentive
yeah,
maybe to look more widely and to say, this does not seem like the be all and end all of
yeah,
everything.
yeah. And so, what advice would you have for someone then who might not have that push or that need to fit in? Maybe someone's watching that feels very comfortable where they're at, but still wishes to make a big impact without having leaving be a part of their big next step.
Well, first they should try to become gay. No, just kidding. You probably can't do that.
Attitude.
But the second option, the
If that
next,
doesn't work, right?
yeah, if that doesn't work, the next best option uh, is, I think that all of us probably have, you might feel very comfortable in the world that you're around, but you probably wouldn't even be watching this summit if you didn't
Yeah,
feel like there was
something.
something additional that you could be contributing.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, somebody that's really like kind of, just fat and happy where they are, they're not looking to do anything different.
yeah,
They're just like, yay me, yay life,
yeah,
right? I think that anyone that is motivated in terms of professional development, or like, taking the initiative to watch
yeah,
something like this, they're probably thinking like, well, I would like a little bit more,
yeah,
what in whatever form that takes. Maybe it's earning a little bit more money. Maybe it's having a little bit more impact. Maybe it's working at a job they like more, or they feel like uses more of their skills. Or maybe it's working with a better kind of
yeah,
client that is more interesting, or, is like less of a pain in the ass, or whatever it
yeah.
is. And so I think that's the place to build on, because of course the great news about the internet is that it really doesn't matter where you live. I mean, I think there are still some advantages to being in a large metropolitan area. I mean, just in kind of a technical sense, right? Like, I live in New
Right,
York, and people are constantly coming through New York, like literally every week. It's like, oh, blah blah, I'm in from Singapore, blah blah, I'm in from Paris, and
right,
and so you get to see all these people. But there's also a downside, right? Because honestly, sometimes I'm just trying to like do work, and it's like, oh my god, I have like the friend from Singapore, the friend from Korea, the friend from
right,
France, and I've got to, like, I can't do my work, I have to go see them. Meanwhile, if you're in Omaha, people kind of have to be making an effort to go to Omaha, so you probably have a lot more time to actually get things done.
right.
So
Well,
you take your advantages, right?
absolutely. And I like what you said a little bit more. I think it doesn't always have to be something big and grand. It can be a little more money, like you said, or a little more effort towards a client that's going to be more fun to work with. Um, so you've been at the entrepreneur game, which I wish it was easier to spell. Every time I try and
Ah,
like, type it, I mess up. But you've
yeah, it
been,
was really only in writing the book called Entrepreneurial You that I got really good at it. You type it like 700 times, and then you're like, oh yeah, I can do that in my
yeah,
sleep.
it's
But
that end. It's
yeah,
that EURIAL thing that always catches me off guard.
yeah, I suggest that you should write a book with entrepreneur in the title. Then you will
Then I'll
nail
get it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been at the game for a while, but while you were writing the book, you did interviews and all sorts of um, reaching out to people that have got some great case studies and some great stories. Were you surprised, or was there anything that you were like, "Ah, I never knew that," or was there any really big ahas from the process of writing that book, which I absolutely love, by the way?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of great things that I learned from it. I mean, probably I'll answer the question two ways. So one is in terms of what was most salient for me personally. One of the very explicit goals that I had in writing Entrepreneurial You was, I had kind of this long range goal that I wanted to get more into doing online courses.
Yeah,
And it was just an area that I'd been kind of tentatively exploring, but I wanted to do more in it. I knew it, I wanted to kind of double down. And I also knew there was a lot I did not know about that process. So in doing the interviews for Entrepreneurial You, I made it an especial effort to look for people who had been successful in that. And so I just grilled them. I just grilled them about all the particulars, like, well, how do you know what to do, and how do you launch it, and blah blah blah.
yeah,
And I got the total 411. I put it all in the book so it could be really like a roadmap for people.
yeah,
But through applying these principles, I was able, in 2016, which is when I was writing the book. It was released last year, but I was writing it during 2016. I just tested everything that was in the book, and I was able to successfully launch my course. It became, really good, successful 6-figure launch for it, and so I felt really good. So personally, that made a big difference for me. I think something that was most interesting, just as like kind of like a damn, that really works sort of thing, is I interviewed a guy named James Clear, who's become a popular blogger, and he has built this massive email list. It has literally 400,000 people on it. I can't even imagine. It's just shocking.
well, I
And
remember when he started. I mean, yeah, he's
yeah,
amazing.
And it's over a pretty short period of time. He's been blogging for about 5 years now, in a very consistent fashion. But that's exactly it. What he says is literally the secret of his success is that he just made a commitment that he would blog twice a week, on a schedule. Mondays and Thursdays, boom, send it out. And he was so methodical and so consistent about it. He said that that is really the only difference that he can find between him and other people. And he's been able to just leverage that consistency, which is so basic and yet so hard for many people to pull off, into this juggernaut.
Yeah. Well, and consistency seems so incredibly simple too. It seems like, well, there's got to be more to it than that.
Yeah.
But when you have value to give and quality, the next step is consistency. So I like that. For a lot of people watching this, they feel like they don't have anything special about them. They feel like they don't have talents, and they consistently watch other people bring new ideas and new products and new courses or whatever to the world. What are some small steps? And I know that you've got a really great assessment that we'll share the link to, but what are some small steps that someone can take to start developing their talents, or even to just kind of pool together what they do know, and maybe be able to start learning about what they could create or an idea they could bring to the world?
Yeah. Well, one of my suggestions for people who feel like, I don't know what's special about me. I don't know what my talents are. Because right, we all sort of start out like that, right? Like, what's distinctive? Who knows? Well, the easiest thing to do, honestly, is don't even worry about what's special about you. Think about who or what is interesting to you. And you probably, anyone watching this probably has a list in their head of like, oh, well, I really like this guy's
Yeah.
podcast, or I really like this gal's blogs, or whatever it is. Just think about the people who are interesting and who are doing the work that you admire. That's kind of what you're drawn to. And then just start out honestly by like interviewing them or profiling them. Whatever kind of creative content that you're putting forward, just focus on other people at first. And that way, it's like, hey, you get a pass. You don't even have to have creative ideas. Just write about other
I love
people,
it.
shine a light on them. And that serves a few really good purposes. One, it familiarizes you more deeply with their work. So that is helpful. That is basically a form of professional development right there. And as you do more and more and more, you develop a pretty exhaustive knowledge of the field.
Yeah.
That is helpful because it ultimately enables you over time to see where the gaps
Mm,
are and to see where there's areas where you actually might have a different perspective. And
brilliant.
that becomes your opening that you see. But you're not going to know what your opening is at first. You need to immerse yourself first and get it. Second benefit is a networking benefit because
Mm,
through reaching out to people and interviewing them, you can build a connection with them.
absolutely.
And, sometimes that doesn't turn into anything, but sometimes it actually does. Sometimes it turns into a friendship. Sometimes it turns
Yeah,
into, a way that you can collaborate later on. So it can become very valuable.
absolutely.
So I think, don't worry too much about like what your unique idea is. Just get started, muck around, and stuff will come to you. This is in many ways the premise that I talk about a lot in my book Stand Out. And you were alluding to this, Naomi, for people who are like really trying to think like, what are my unique
Yeah.
ideas? I do have a 42-page self-assessment, so it's pretty exhaustive. It walks people through how to do it. You can get it at dorieclark.com/join.
Perfect. Well, and one of the things that I found fascinating about I can't even say it, Entrepreneurial You, is that you gave all of the tips and tricks. Like, it's not just here's some of it and then you leave readers to figure out the rest of it. You literally lay out in all of the different aspects, whether it's going to be videos or courses or a book or coaching, or I mean, you go into detail on all of this. Like, if someone's got this snippet of an idea in their head, then it's kind of like the next thing they have to do is buy your book and then be consistent. Is there anything else that someone would need to add to that secret sauce, or that methodology?
I mean, you're exactly right. I really tried in Entrepreneurial You to lay everything out. I get annoyed, I think probably a lot of people do, when there's people who are, sort of dangling like,
Yeah.
I know these secrets. And then, they'll do like a 90-minute webinar. And at the end of the 90
Oh,
minutes, you're like, what the fuck did I just sit here for? Like, what was the point of this? Like, I got to see pictures of you and your dog and your Ferrari,
yeah,
like Mazel Tov.
yeah.
I just find it so irksome. And so I have always believed that the best way to to earn money, the way to do it with integrity is just give it all away. Just
Yeah.
give away all the secrets. And if you actually have done a good job, then there's going to be plenty of people who say, "Oh, this is so amazing." And here, here's the part is that they need help translating it sometimes. And so people, might come to me, and I have an executive coaching practice, so people often will come to me and we end up doing a coaching engagement, or we do end up, they end up participating in a mastermind, or they join my recognized expert course or
Yeah.
something like that. So there's plenty of ways for me to monetize without keeping secrets. The way to monetize is that if people like what you have to say, then they want to interact
They
more
want
with
more.
you. So in my world, there's no point or no incentive to just like dangle stuff and make people
Right.
angry.
Yeah, I like that, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, I've been following you and have read all of your books, and it's that same premise that you have developed this trust and the like no trust factor. And people, I think, when they start to follow you and follow your work and know your integrity and know your the value you give, we're going to buy everything that you put out there. And I think that's I know that to be true. Um, as we start to wrap up, what is one of your personal mantras?
Well, one of my favorites in the last couple of years is one that really, like, I hadn't thought of for a long time, but it was something that my mom used to say when I was a kid, and it became kind of appropriate for me because I moved to New York about 3.5 years ago. And when you move to a new city, you know some people, but it's not like you know tons of people.
Right.
And the people that I did know, like when I first moved here, I was just like sitting at home all the time because they kind of knew that I moved to New York, but they also kind of didn't think of me as living in New York.
Yeah.
And so if they were having something, it's not like they were inviting me. They're like, "Oh, Dorie, she's in Boston." And it's like, "No, motherfucker, no, I'm not." And so you like really need to like remind them, like, "No, I am here now."
Yeah.
And so I was just like, well, what can I do about this situation? And so Mama used to always say, if you want to get an invitation, you have to give an invitation. And I always thought that was great because it's a very kind of empowering, proactive mantra. And so I just started inviting people to all kinds of things. I started organizing dinner gatherings
I
and
love it.
really being very, very social. Much more so than I was certainly when I lived in Boston, for 17 years and had
Yeah.
this like, kind of network there. But so I really built a network from scratch in New York, and it's been great. I feel so happy now and so
Yeah.
proud of the great friends that I've assembled. It's like such a nice community, and it's really because of the advice that my mom had about just make the first effort.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people that actually make that first gesture, but if you do, it really pays off.
And I think I remember you saying in another interview that you did it across all different realms. Like you did it personally, you did it professionally. You would invite people to things that weren't yours. Like you would go to gatherings and invite someone else to go with you, if I remember right. So it's not just that you're inviting
Sometimes,
people.
yeah. I mean, obviously where it's appropriate, right? It's
Right.
like, oh, I just thought I could bring you to this
Right.
wedding.
But,
Come
I think, yeah,
on.
just crash something. I think there was a couple of examples of like I don't know, a seminar or something that you were going to go to. And so you invited a couple of other people along. And I think that's great advice. Taking that first step also puts you in control instead of
Right.
staying home by yourself. Yeah. So you are all over the place. What is one thing that you do to reset when you are stressed, when you're overwhelmed, when you've got a lot going on? What's your go-to for resetting?
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan, because I do travel a lot, especially sometimes that is just really very physically
Yeah.
wearying. You're like stuffed into an airplane and for a long time, and your time zones get messed up and all of that. So I would say that probably some of my favorite things to reset would be if I've been traveling for a long time. I will come back and like the day that I land or the day after, I'll get a massage. That is great. And then another one that I enjoy that's sort of invariably pleasing is just like taking a hot bath
Yeah.
and having like like a detective book on my Kindle or something like that.
Goes back to that mystery stuff.
Exactly.
So do you think you'll ever have that mystery book published now that you've got several books under your hat?
I probably won't have that one published. Usually your first novel isn't that good anyway. Perhaps as evinced by the fact that I could only get one publisher to be interested, and then none of the others were. But will I publish another one? Yes, I think that I will. I
Yeah.
think there are a lot of creative enterprises that I am interested in. Like I do stand-up comedy. I've done a bunch of that. I am going to be entering a program in the fall about it's a musical theater fellowship
Mm,
program for writing musical theater. That's a creative
very
thing that I'm
cool.
doing. And so mysteries have not fallen off the list. It's just a question of kind of the order in which
Right.
I do things, but 100% I'm going to publish a mystery novel, in the coming years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Dorie, for your time. I'm excited to share all of the stuff that you do, your assessment, the different books with those of us or those that are watching. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave as a parting shot?
Thank you. Well, I'll just mention for folks that are interested, I have more than 500 free articles available on my website. This is stuff that I've written over the years for Forbes and the Harvard Business Review and things like that. So if people want to dive into the oeuvre, as it were, with all the different advice and everything, you can get it all for free off of my website at dorieclark.com.
Perfect. And I would really, really recommend those of you that are watching to check out Entrepreneurial You. It's fantastic, and it really is a blueprint for getting your ideas out into the world. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Naomi. Take
All
care.
right. Bye, Dorie.